So farmed Atlantic salmon is actually very similar to wild Atlantic salmon life cycles. The only difference is that a farmed salmon is given multiple opportunities to grow. So we give them lots of food and we give them good water quality environment to grow in. We have a facility on land and fresh water, and then they'll go through the same process. They will become parr and they will become smolt. And then in that spring, summer, when they would normally go to sea in the wild, we will actually ship our fish out to the marine environment.
When it comes time to transport them from the hatcheries to the salmon sites, they're seined up in the tanks, in the hatcheries, transported on a truck to the nearest wharf, and then usually loaded onto a transportation vessel, which will then steam out to our sea cage site like we have out here, and then move into the cages that we have.
Typical day, well, it's hard to nail down a typical day. That's part of what I love about this job. You're out here every day on the farm. Any issues that arise in maintenance of your feed systems, care of your fish, there's always something to do on a farm, and it's always a little different. So it's nice, it keeps life interesting.
They also do a weekly surface inspection over all of our cages, everything above the water hull. So the cages, the nets, buoys, bridles, all the pieces of equipment on the farm. So they'll go over everything, see if there's anything that needs to be upgraded, maintained, changed in any nature, and they'll send that in. And they also do a monthly safety inspection as well.
We've invested a lot of money in remote operated vehicles which go and they wash the organic growth off of the nets, and we do that about every 12 days. That ensures we have pristine conditions in our cages. We're not washing heavy organics and going near the bottom, and it eliminates the need for any heavy metals being put into the water.
Over the last few years, we've introduced Sapphire Net, which has a stainless steel core, so it gives improved strength and structural integrity to those nets. The new Sapphire netting holds its shape much better than the previous styles of nylon netting, which makes it a lot easier for these remote operated net cleaners to operate.
Another huge step forward in our continued efforts to improve the sustainability of our farm practices was the introduction of underwater cameras. We now have cameras both underwater and above water at all of our sites. We also have staffed remote feed stations to oversee our operations at sites with central feeding systems.
Well, to have eyes underneath the water, in the past before underwater cameras were used, only scuba divers that we would have on site doing maintenance would actually get to see the animals. So when we fed, it would have just been at the surface, and it's like only seeing a very small volume of what's in the enclosure. So with the underwater cameras in use, we'll go down through the cage system about 2/3 of the depth of the enclosure, and we look back up through the school of fish that's above. And by watching that school of fish where they're placed and what they're doing in response during feeding, we know how they're eating and we know how much to give them.
So they're able to slow down and stop the feed rates before any overfeed happens. So by watching the behavior of the fish, they're able to anticipate when they've reached satiation, so no feed is wasted on the farm.
When we first started out in this industry, we would throw feed in by hand. It wasn't very efficient, and we progressed to where we are today. We're standing beside a large feed system. Every cage has a camera in it so that it's monitored. We feed the fish the right amount of feed, when they want the feed, and how they want the feed. That's just one small example of how technology has developed. If we look back 5 years ago to where we are now, it's truly unbelievable.
Using the underwater camera technology, we're also able to measure the length of the fish, which helps us calculate weight and monitor growth. In addition to the underwater cameras, Cook has a team of divers who rotate between our farm sites to monitor infrastructure, technology, and the fish.
About 80% of the site's underwater, so a lot of people don't really realize that most of the action happens under the surface. Once a week, we got to check every cage. This is Rathlin Beach, there's 20 cages here, and we have to go in to make sure there's nothing in the cage and any damage. There could be seals or anything like that. We have to do bottom videos once a month just to make sure that the bottom's clear. All the anchor work, we do grid inspections, swim the entire grid, video them, send them all in, go over all the rope, make sure there's no chafe marks, net condition, and fish activity, make sure there's no problems with any of the fish. Usually with remote feeding, if they see anything wrong with the cages, they'll give us a call. We come in and make sure the fish activity is good, make sure there's a good school, check condition, and make sure there's nothing wrong in the cages. We usually have a 5-man team, Instead of one diver in the cage, we put 2 in, and that way there's more eyes on anything if there's anything wrong in the cage. We can be tethered to the surface or tethered to each other, and that way there we can keep in constant communication the whole time.
At the end of every cycle, after 16 to 18 months, our salmon are grown up to 10 to 12 pounds minimum in size. Once you get to the harvest stage, we have our harvest vessels come out to the farm. The site crew will seine up a small volume of fish. Harvest vessel will put in a pumping apparatus. The fish will be withdrawn from the pump, go up onto the harvest vessel through a dewatering table. They're euthanized by a pneumatic stunning device, and then they're put into a super chill water solution, which lowers the core temperature of those fish. Once they have a full load, which can be anywhere between 8,000 and 25,000 fish of a 10-pound average. They'll either offload at a wharf, the fish will be put into a tanker truck, or the vessel may sail directly to our processing plant in New Brunswick.
Atlantic salmon farming has come a long way from its early years. At Cook Aquaculture, we are constantly investing in research and development, closely watching the impacts of our past and changing and updating our current processes to improve our way forward.
Aquaculture is one of those very fascinating technologies that can raise seafood, raise protein availability to the general population in a sustainable and manageable way.